What is up, my friends, and what is up, all of you X-Men 97 fans? Season 1 has now come to an end, and I feel dead inside. But just like I've done before here on the channel, I thought it'd be a great idea to kind of take all of these episodes and put them all side by side and see which one is worst and which one is best. And every episode of this season was freaking amazing, so it's gonna be a tough list. But be sure to include your rank down in the comments. I'd love to see it, and yeah, let's not waste time. Before I dive in, make sure you smash like and subscribe if you're new here. A like helps me a ton in the algorithm, my friends, and I'd very much appreciate it. If you hit it, you'd be a beast. But we're going to start from the bottom, and then we're going to work our way to the top. So I'm going to start with number 10. My friends, my least favorite episode of this entire season was episode 4, Motendo / Life Death Part 1. But I'll say this again, and I'll probably end up saying it even more times, but like every single episode was great in this season, so it really was hard to pick like my least favorite. But when I was really thinking about it, just all the stuff with Jubilee and Roberto and Mojo, even like Mojo was fun, but it very much was just fun, if that makes sense. When you think about the season as a whole and you compare it to the other episodes, this was definitely like one of the lighter parts of the entire season. The stakes weren't insane. And then as for Life Death Part 1, it really doesn't get interesting until Adversary, that demon bird thing, shows up at the end. And so yeah, that was my number 10. But on to number 9, and kind of sticking with the same theme here, I'm going episode 6, Life Death Part 2. And I think this one is further down just because it's not featuring a lot of the other mutants. It's lacking a lot of the fun that we have when we have kind of the camaraderie of everybody coming together. You basically in this episode just have Charles and everything going on with him, and you're kind of finally seeing that side of the story. And it was like, oh my gosh, Charles is back. And then you also have Storm getting her powers back, which was super badass. It also gets really heavy towards the end with Charles having that sequence that was sort of echoing the events of Genosha and Gambit. I mean, I remember just being blown away by the end of that. But yeah, that would be my number 9. And then number 8, and I don't know why this one was actually, this was the hardest for me to place, but I went with episode 1, To Me, My X-Men. And I have this one above the last two just mainly because they did such a rock solid job at introducing us back to this world, getting us back into the feel of X-Men, the animated series, and what this kind of new Marvel MCU X-Men 97 is gonna feel like. They brought the team together, there was a bunch of action, you know, and in the end against the Sentinels and trying to get Trask. I don't know, after that first episode, I was absolutely stoked. You also have that quote-unquote Jean having the sinister premonition, and then Magneto coming in at the end. It was beautiful. But moving on to number 7, I'm actually going with episode number 7. It's like 7 at 7. We're having some fun at the casino. But I'm going episode 7, Bright Eyes. And this was really Rogue's episode, man. And this is also the start of Bastion, who was a very welcome late season villain addition for me. But the pain Rogue was feeling in this episode was brutal. And this was also just an example for me of how well they wrote for their characters in this damn show. It was so great, just the character arc that Rogue has, especially after the events of Genosha, after the events of episode 5. It was just crazy to see kind of where her character was going to go, and then the amount of emotion they just pumped into her. It was crazy. But then on to number 6, I'm going episode 2, Mutant Liberation Begins, mainly for just like that entire Magneto sequence where he lifts those UN members into the sky while giving this insanely beautiful monologue. It was the first moment of the season for me where I was like, oh my god. And I remember thinking to myself, like, man, this is probably one of the crazier parts of the season. Like, I can't believe they're doing this early, but little did I know how insane things were about to get. Also, the twist with Jean showing up at the door at the end, you have Storm losing her powers. There was just a lot going on in that episode. I thoroughly enjoyed it. But moving on to number 5, and this is where things get interesting. Number 5 is Tolerance is Extinction Part 1, and very similar to episode 2. I kind of have it in the middle of the pack because there's this monologue that Val gives at the end, and meanwhile you have Magneto escaping from Bastion, and he's going and he's literally shutting off the power of the entire world, and you have this epic music going on, and finally you get to the climactic line, Magneto was right, and that just blew my freaking mind. Also, Charles coming back at the end, man, just like chef's kiss right there. And then number 4, and this is a very funny episode for me because I remember after watching this episode, I just didn't think that the season could get any better than this. Like, I didn't think that I was going to have another experience like I did in this episode. Like, I just thought it was going to be my favorite overall. But my number 4 is episode 3, Fire Made Flesh. And this episode was just a blast, man. Bringing in Mr. Sinister and giving the whole thing this crazy horror vibe. I'm a massive horror guy, and so that was so much fun. But once again, it still managed to move the story forward. You have the Jean and Madeline stuff taking place, and then Nathan going to the future with Forge. I just absolutely loved it. I absolutely loved the introduction of Sinister. It just all was so creepy. You had the Goblin Queen. Like, it was just a blast. But on to the top 3. My number 3 is episode 9, Tolerance is Extinction Part 2. And this is just the start of the battle, man. You have the moment where Magneto split the X-Men, getting Sunspot and Rogue to join him. I remember just like feeling something in that moment. You also have Scott watching Nathan and Jean battling. I remember talking about that in my reaction, this like Harry Potter moment, like the wands connecting, and then Logan stabbing Magneto just for Eric to rip the adamantium out of his body. Just an absolutely insane episode. It deserves a top 3 nod here, fully for that cliffhanger that it had heading into the final episode. That was just like batshit crazy. And then on to number 2, and I don't know if this will be like a divisive opinion or if people will agree with it, but I put the finale. I put Tolerance is Extinction Part 3 as my number 2. And you can kind of see now where I'm probably going with my number 1, but it's a close call because the finale was about as epic as it possibly could have been. The final fight with Bastion, Jean and Scott saying goodbye to Cable, goodbye to Nathan. You got Charles bringing Magneto back with like all that emotion and saving the world. It was just unbelievable. And then the setup for Apocalypse, which I missed. If you're a fan of my channel, like I had to go back and watch that. But that is extremely exciting heading into season 2. It was just one of the best culmination episode experiences that I've had in recent memory. I mean, I literally have 0 complaints, and that's a very rare thing when it comes to the finale of a season. So good stuff, and I can't believe we already made it here to my number 1. This episode is just an episode that hit me really, really hard, man. And I know for a fact that it resonated with a lot of people out there. My number 1 is episode 5, Remember It. And it truly was just a perfect storm of lived experience and worldly influences driving a story and animation that's able to connect on so many levels. I saw so many different takes and opinions, and that's just the beauty of art. That's why I can never take the, well, it's just a superhero show or a superhero movie, like that BS. I can't take that shit seriously because these stories have a lot more to them than meets the eye, especially and specifically when they're done right. Losing Gambit raised the stakes in a massive way for me, and the way that this attack just comes out of nowhere, it was chilling, and honestly, it's probably one of my favorite episodes of television ever. And I know that might seem like a bold take, but it's true. It's just like the feeling that I got after watching this episode. I was just like, man, this was one of the craziest things and most beautiful things that I've ever seen. And I love how animation can do that. It was very, for me at least, Avatar: The Last Airbender-like. If you follow my channel, you know that that's like my favorite show of all time. And it just, I got those same feelings. They managed to capture that emotion in those moments, those crucial moments. And so yeah, man, episode 5, Remember It, is my number 1. And now I really just want to turn it over to you guys. I'd love to see your guys' lists, kind of see where you rank things. There's a lot of episodes, there was a lot of high moments, there really weren't too many low moments, aside from like emotional moments, like emotionally low, but I would just love to see where you guys rank things. So please, put it down in the comments. Don't hesitate to leave your thoughts about my ranking list as well. Let me know what you thought of that, and as always, I'd love to read it. But if you haven't already, make sure you smash the like button before you head out, and click on another video. You can follow me on X if you want to reach out at Jones Vibes Only, and don't forget to keep up the good vibes, guys. But that was my ranking of X-Men 97.